How far can this go though? Because let's say, for instance, courier drivers. If you are a courier driver for Australia Post or any other company, many of them are contractors. So they're a sole trader who's come to an agreement with Australia Post. Australia Post gives them the money. They've then got to go and do their tax and, they don't get leave, etc. Will people like that end up in the same situation where, I don't know, all the contractors at Australia Post could go off to the Fair Work Commission and say, we want a standardised rate, we want leave? I mean, at that point, you may as well make them full-time employees.
Well, that's one of the things about what we seem to be seeing in the positioning of this change is that we're only changing some aspects of the relationship, of the contract relationship. So maybe they'll be able to challenge some things, but not challenge other things. And what we're doing is this incremental progress towards that full regulation through the Fair Work Commission. And in the meantime, what we'll just have is more complexity in an already fantastically complex employee relations system. This is the biggest re-regulation we've seen for 100 years of the labour market in Australia.
Well, I mean, who's asking for it? I think we know that the answer is probably the unions, but to what end?
Well, indeed. And most surveys of the people in the so-called gig economy, the independent contractors, those employed under labour hire arrangements, are actually very satisfied with what they've got. Of course, when people sign a contract, they're making a choice. And it's interesting when you follow up and ask them, well, are you happy with the choices that you've made? They're saying, yeah, this is working for me. People want that flexibility that you can't get in the core labour market, which is already highly regulated. But this is going to be pushed out at the behest of the unions and that agenda for re-regulation.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things is I actually did Deliveroo once when it still existed. I was filming a documentary over at SBS, and I did it on a Sunday afternoon and I did it on a Monday afternoon. I made the same amount of money on the Monday afternoon in 1.5 hours that I made in 4 hours on the Sunday. So if you change that, if you create a standardised rate, then you can work the same number of hours and essentially end up with less money. So it might be good for some workers, but it will be dudding others in the gig economy.
Well, that's right, and again, the minister is a bit all over the place on this. So supposedly they won't get involved in the setting of rates. It won't be allowed under the legislation, but perhaps the Fair Work Commission will look into it down the track. And again, they'll regulate some aspects of the relationship, but not others. And you can imagine how that's going to work in practice with constant calls to eliminate the so-called rorts. There's always a moral language around this, even though it's an arrangement that the contractor and the person purchasing the services have come to and are pretty happy with.
Scott Hargreaves, thank you for your time.